Hey, look at that, we're returning to the Wii U once more in this marathon, and this time, Platinum's working with one of Nintendo's major icons. Well, I say major, but the reality is that even though the Star Fox series is relatively popular, before Star Fox Zero came out in 2016, the last game was Star Fox Command, which was released for the Nintendo DS in 2006. That's a long 10-year gap. You thought Metroid fans had it bad, Star Fox fans just assumed that Fox McCloud and co. handed in their honorary badges never to return. Star Fox is a series of games I've sort of dabbled in and out of. Most of them heavily involved on-rail shooting in your spaceship known as the R-Wing, and you were accompanied, in massive air quotes there, by Peppy Hare, Falco Lombardi, and Slippy Toad. It was meant to replicate the space battles that you'd see in something like Star Wars, blasting everything out of your way and fighting the boss at the end of the stage, thwarting the plans of the villainous Monkey Man Andross from taking over the Lilat system. So far, the only Star Fox games I've played are the original Super Nintendo game, Star Fox 64. I actually just finished Star Fox 2 while getting footage for this review, and believe it or not, my very first Star Fox game was Star Fox Adventures on the GameCube. A shameless Ocarina of Time clone with barely any space shooting, and I remember enjoying this one for a while, even with the ridiculous voice acting, but then the adventure started to go on far longer than it needed to, so I stopped and sold it on eBay. I was 10, bear in mind, so let that speak for itself. Star Fox Zero is the last game in the series I've played at this current time. Maybe someday I'll get into the other titles too, but I'm in no rush right now. Nevertheless, Zero was pretty well hyped on Nintendo's part. During their E3 digital event in 2015, there was this cute little puppet sketch leading up to the game's release, there was an animated short to set up the events, and the development was passed on to Platinum Games to give us that classic arcade experience. And presumably because Nintendo liked what they did with the Star Fox Easter egg in Bayonetta 2. Clearly both Nintendo and Platinum wanted to put in as much care as possible into this game, but ultimately what let it down was the control. If you've played the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Wii U gamepad is required to play Star Fox Zero, as not only does the aiming reticle need to use motion controls, but the gamepad also acts as the cockpit view for more accurate shots. You can destroy enemies from a third-person perspective, okay, but you may find some of your shots flat out missing, and the best way to make sure they blow up is by looking down at the gamepad. Now you are capable of switching between these two views on the TV by pressing the minus button, but in highly intense battles it's a little inconvenient. In theory, the whole concept sounds really cool, but it will take some time to get used to. There is a training mode available if you want to learn the game's controls and do some basic maneuvering, but if you're not willing to make the time for it, then I'll tell you now, this isn't the game for you. Alternatively, what you can do is change the controls so that you only need motion controls when the fire button is held down, and that way you can control the R-Wing and shoot like you would in any other Star Fox game. However, even tapping the fire button and moving the gamepad activates the motion controls, so with this option enabled, you kinda have a combination of normal R-Wing controls and motion controls. But I think this is a much better way to play the game, and because the aiming reticle snaps back to the ship when you stop firing, this means you won't have to keep pressing the Y button to recalibrate the gamepad, which trust me you'll be doing a lot if you use the default controls, and it's damn annoying. Gotta say though, not a fan of using the right stick to change my ship's position or double tapping it to do a barrel roll and block projectiles. In the other games that could be easily done with the bumper buttons, and I don't mind the change of clicking the right stick to fire Nova Bombs, and the boosting and braking I eventually got used to, but using the right stick to turn and dodge obstacles feels so unnatural to me. Somersaults and 180-degree turns can also be done by moving the right and left sticks a certain way, but it's unresponsive most of the time. Thankfully though, you can also use the X and B buttons to perform those same maneuvers, so I'm happy about that, especially because you're going to need to somersault a lot if you want to beat Starwolf. It may seem like I'm getting so caught up with the game's controls that I've completely forgotten to talk about the story, but truth be told, there's not much else to tell aside from the very brief explanation I did earlier. In fact, the plot for Star Fox Zero was almost identical to Star Fox 64. Andross was a scientist banished from Star Fox and now he wants to take over the Lilat system, so go stop him. It's not only the story that borrows from Star Fox 64, but the gameplay takes so many cues from it, it's almost like a remake of that game, which already had a remake on the 3DS, and even the original SNES game has a couple of callbacks to it. Now despite that, I do think there's enough different here to make it a separate game, but I imagine Star Fox veterans will be highly disappointed with how much it does borrow from a near 20-year-old game at that time. Maybe because of the 10-year gap between this and Star Fox Command, they wanted to keep fans comfortable by adding something familiar, but we can't really say for sure. In the case of this series, for me personally, I'm not bothered by the similarities, and I genuinely think that Star Fox Zero is a good game. Is it the best in the series? Not quite, but I still had an enjoyable time with this one, and there's at least a bit of replayability from the secret levels you can access by performing certain tasks in the right stages, like using the kinda sorta returning walker from Star Fox 2 to press this switch and open a locked door that leads you to a different part of the level. Unlocking these extra levels can be a little unclear, such as in Titania where you need to use the Landmaster to fly into this portal in the background, or when you need to wait for members of Star Wolf to arrive on the stage select screen. But I like that there are multiple pathways you can take to reach Andross, and thankfully, unlike other Star Fox games, unless you're playing arcade mode where you need to finish the game with one life, you don't have to start the game over to unlock a different path. You can just choose which level you want to go back to and have a shot at it. Unfortunately, there are a number of secret levels that aren't that special, like the rematches with Star Wolf, and the alternate version of Zonus where it's basically a time trial, and you don't use the new gyro wing that's only present in this one level and nowhere else. It's sort of supposed to be like a stealth vehicle that deploys a little robot to hack things, but with how little the gyro wing's used, it feels like a pointless inclusion. I did enjoy returning to Fortuna from the SNES game, and I like seeing the twin-headed bird thing again. I know it's technically not a secret level, but chances are on your first playthrough, you're not going to save Peppy from Star Wolf on time in the level before it, and we'll just go straight to Titania. Didn't really like the secret boss in Aqua Rosa. I thought the EMP meter was too big to easily avoid and came out too frequently. And you have to do this twice if you want to unlock all the hidden paths. You can make the gameplay a little more interesting if you have the Fox and Falco amiibos that grant you the 16-bit ship from the original Star Fox and the Black R-Wing. The 16-bit ship doesn't allow you to target enemies while charging, but the shots have a larger blast radius to make up for it, and the Black R-Wing takes more damage but it also deals more damage. You are also able to unlock them by collecting all the hidden medals in the game's story mode, but I ain't got time for that, regardless of Star Fox Zero only being around 3 hours long, not including the extra levels. Not bad for making the game replayable, but at its current price it may not be enough for some people. There are always different training missions you can do, 2 of which have the exclusive Roadmaster, which just feels like a weaker Landmaster to me. Though if you're looking for something meatier than a bunch of training missions, then sorry to say you're not going to find that here. I suppose I should also quickly talk about Star Fox Guard, which originally came bundled with Star Fox Zero. This is basically a tower defense game where you need to adjust the cameras around your mining base and place them however you like, though I usually just leave the cameras how they are, and use the equipped turrets on those cameras to fend off against robots looking to destroy the base. Your main goal is to get rid of the combat robots that'll wipe out the base in no time flat if they reach the center, but more often than not, they're accompanied by supportive robots that can do stuff like jam a camera's feed until it's destroyed, serve nothing as a mere distraction, or can even blow up your cameras, disabling them for a while until they're self-repaired. Ugh, screw those guys. Once you've successfully defended your base, you get your earned metal parts to level you up and unlock extra stages and abilities. There are multiple levels per act, and completing all of them lets you access the boss stage. That's pretty much it in terms of Star Fox Guard. It's really nothing but a little distraction that you'd spend maybe 15 to 30 minutes on, and then you put it down and play something else. It is a fun little distraction, but nothing too deep, and it's not really meant to be. I see this working more for the new 3DS than the Wii U, but there wasn't any harm putting it on the Wii U either. At the end of the day, Star Fox Zero was the bigger part of the package, and honestly at this point it seems that Nintendo have absolutely no idea what to do with Star Fox and its crew anymore, but I'd highly recommend at least giving Star Fox Zero a shot if you're willing to commit to the game's controls. This is a very pretty Wii U game aside from the lip syncing making the characters look like sock puppets again. And the soundtrack is fully orchestrated and while not particularly memorable fits with each of the settings. But for reasons I'll never understand, the radio chatter is set to the gamepad and it's tinny audio with no way of changing it to the TV, which is terrible for recording and makes moments like the mission briefings look really awkward. Again, your opinion on Star Fox Zero really depends on how you feel about using the gamepad. This isn't your traditional arcade space shooter, and if you're able to put up with it, I think you'll have a good time. However, I know there are plenty of people out there that can't stand the control scheme and it completely ruined the experience for them, so all I can really say is pick this game up and see what you think. Oh my goodness, I can see the end of this year-long Platinum Tunnel! We've only got one more game left to discuss, and it's another RPG, so yeah, this one's gonna be pretty hefty, but thankfully, unlike Infinite Space, I actually managed to finish this one. So with that said, I will see you guys next time when we conclude this marathon with Nier Automata. My god, the lineup of cars just never freaking ends. I thought Bayonetta 2 was bad. This was just absolutely awful. This has been the biggest pain in the ass review I've had to record so far, and that's really saying something.